I will be brief because I know you have a great many experts that you want to hear from. But I think it's important that you're here, and I think it's important that you convey to my colleagues really what's at stake here. We are here at a really important time. The President's budget is on the table, and this week we will be voting on the House budget resolution, a subject I will return to in a minute. But if I may, your task over the next couple of days as you're here on the Hill is to convince my colleagues of the necessity for investment in our infrastructure, and whether it is our wastewater infrastructure or our drinking water infrastructure or whatever it is, we're losing the fight. We are behind in terms of what we need to do. And I'll just give you an example of how sort of the attitude of austerity has affected decision making. The President's budget for the Clean Water SRF, his request for fiscal 15 represents a 30% reduction from fiscal 14. And his request for the drinking water SRF reflects a 17% reduction. Now, what those numbers would do, if they were to take on the force of law, is put us even further behind in terms of addressing the issues that we need to address. And the other issue, the resolution that's on the floor tomorrow, I guess, and I think we'll probably vote on it on Thursday, would cut what we call non-defense domestic discretionary spending by, are you ready, $791 billion over the next 10 years from the post-sequestration FY13 baseline. So, sorry to be technical, but if you take FY13 as originally appropriated, reduce it by the sequestration that was imposed, so round numbers 5.5%, and then carry that forward, that would be the baseline. So we would be carrying forward from a really, really troubling baseline in terms of our ability to do what we need to do, and it would reduce that baseline by $791 billion. Now that's where the federal contribution to the SRF comes from domestic discretionary. And so it is absolutely inconceivable that we would somehow be able to cut $791 billion but hold harmless contributions to the SRF. Ain't gonna happen. Just ain't gonna happen. And so, again, one of your challenges, I think, over the next couple of days is to let people know what that would mean. What would it mean if the amounts of money that would be available to the kinds of projects that you are engaged in from the federal government would be cut that severely? Now, many of you know I have a piece of legislation, the Water Quality and Jobs Creation Act, that would reauthorize the SRF, would increase the allocation or increase the authorization to roughly $2.8 billion a year. As I say, in FY13, FY14, we're spending $1.4 billion. So it would double the authorization. It would create in effect, what we're calling a toolbox approach to water infrastructure financing. It would create a wastewater trust fund, and it would also have a WIFIA component that would be routed through the SRF. And one of the options out there is to have WIFIA that would bypass the SRF. I don't support that. Let me tell you why. I think that let me tell you what my frame of reference is. I came to the Congress after having spent 29 years as a college administrator, and 7 of those years I was a financial aid director. Some of you probably, when you were in college, borrowed from something called the National Defense Student Loan. Ring a bell with anyone? Or the National Direct Student Loan, and now its latest iteration, same program, is called the Perkins Loan Program. Well, the way that program works is exactly the way the SRF works. Federal government seeds the funding to the colleges that maintain the fund. Colleges loan it out, they collect it, money goes back into a revolving loan fund, they keep reloaning. There's been no new contribution to the federal capital contribution to the student loan fund since 2003. And under current law, the student loan fund is recalled by the Treasury in 2015, and the program will cease to exist. Why? Because we have something that we call direct lending. And the argument is that you don't need two loan programs if you have direct lending. Forgive me for going on about this, folks, but it's important. You don't need a national rescue loan. My fear is the exact same thing will happen to the SRF if we have access to a loan fund called WIFIA, and it is not routed through the SRF. And somebody who, with a sharp pencil and a green eye shade, 3 years from now is going to say, "Hey, why do we need the SRF? Well, we got WIFIA. Let's save $1 billion a year." That's a real concern. And so I think WIFIA in and of itself can be a very good thing, but not if it is to the detriment of the funding and the support that we've historically provided to the SRF. So that's what's on the table. We're dealing with elements of this in the word of reauthorization and in the word of conference report. Where that's going to end, I don't know. But I do think you can help build the groundswell of recognition that these are issues we can't just ignore. Investment in water infrastructure, everybody wins. I mean, for every $1 billion we spend, we hire 33,000 people to build it. We also improve and protect the environment, and we also open the door for economic activity. Matt knows some of the districts I represent. I live in the village of Southampton, okay? The Hamptons, the glitzy Hamptons, right? You've all heard of the Hamptons. Okay, well, you cannot add a wet use in the village of Southampton right now. So if somebody wants to open up a new restaurant or a new bar, can you imagine that, a bar in the Hamptons? But they can't do it because there is no capacity to treat the waste. So now, Southampton can survive that. I mean, we have enough other economic activity, but lots of communities can't. There's other communities that I represent that are absolutely maxed out in terms of their ability to grow because there's no reasonable way that exists to treat the waste without impairing significantly the water, the surface, the quality of the surface water. So we win economically, we win environmentally, and we win in terms of putting people to work. So let's do it. But what we need to do, as I say, is bring more of my colleagues to the table. And by the way, I am not a voice in the wilderness. A lot of my colleagues think this way, nor is this a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. This is an issue that transcends traditional party definitions or traditional party roles. This is an issue that people who are thinking about these issues recognize the value of the imperative. So I will leave you with that. I thank you for participating. I'm honored to be along with Jimmy Duncan, a good friend and an author of previous SRF reauthorization bills that very closely track the bill that I've filed. Honored to join him in putting this caucus together, and so I wish you well. Thank you all very much.